Hey everybody, it's Tipa, and I'm back with a friend of ours. Hey, good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
Yeah, and so I asked when we meted each other, Daryl agreed with me. I said, so what would you like to focus on today? And you were really clear. There was a thing that needed to be focused on. And so go ahead and share that out if you would.
Sure. So just to introduce myself for those folks that don't know, I am Dr. Ashwini Bapat. I'm a palliative care physician and co-founder of APINE-MD, where we provide coaching to individuals who are aging and living with illness. So,
okay, now, because you're a physician.
Yes.
But you believe in the value of coaching people.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. Because I don't.
That's real different. I'm just going to say that.
Oh, okay.
That's a very different model than we hear. So you're not giving advice. You're actually working with people with their abilities and their skills and their resources to figure out what's going to probably work for them and running some drills with them to see if it is going to work and then putting them in the game and see how it goes and then monitoring a little bit.
Yeah. And the reason why I see that as going so well with palliative care, which we will get to. So just for those listening, palliative care is basically an extra layer of support for anyone living with an illness or for anyone who's going through the aging process. And it's for you and it's for your caregivers and your loved ones. So the entire support system is who we're serving. And so I actually don't see coaching in palliative care to be that different, because palliative care is incredibly personal. It is personalized to the values of that individual and of their family. And so they're actually, to me, they go really well together. So that's why it is surprising, but it's, in my mind, it's not that shocking.
Yeah, see, that's why we should together, because it's because I can't live your life for you. I can't tell you how to live your life, but I can support you in living your life. And if we know what you really care about, we can really make that a priority. And then if other people have different thoughts, we need to work through that, not ignore that information, because it will result in conflict as things go forward if we don't figure these things out.
Exactly. And the way that I see, whether it's palliative care or actually just medical care as a whole, I really see the purpose of medical care to get you closer to what's important to you, what your values are, what your goals are. That's it. In the simplest form, that is it. And unless we know from you what is important to you, it's hard to get you there, right? Because otherwise we're using kind of our own individual belief system, and that may be different from what your thoughts are and what's important to you.
Yeah. And I think when we come into the world of dementia, I mean, I talk about there's always a triad there as the condition changes and changes and changes, because there's going to be another party often, almost always at some point involved, because dementia changes your agency in many ways. And that old, it was physician and person. I mean, it was just like that. And it's like, it hadn't been like that for a while, because, there's so many other variables that enter in. And I think sometimes it was the bookkeeper, the insurance.
Yeah, I mean.
And so we're trying to move away from that back to high quality, what we consider high quality practice, valuable practice to support people. Yeah. And so knowing that we've got to figure out how to build this support, this structural support, this pyramidal sort of support with the person like being up there at the top, that means we've got to build solid foundation all around.
Yes.
And in my mind, that takes time.
It does. So this is actually, The other thing I want to re-emphasize is that palliative care is very different from hospice care. Hospice care is truly wonderful end-of-life care in the last couple months of someone's life. Okay.
Yep.
But palliative care can start much earlier in the aging process, in the illness process. Ideally, we're involved when someone gets a diagnosis of dementia or a memory problem. That's ideally when we would actually want to start seeing this person, seeing their loved ones, and start having conversations, because you're right. Understanding an individual's values, what's important to them, takes time. Building trust takes time. And it is much more effective when it's done much earlier on in an illness.
Agreed. And so let's define palliative a bit. And I'm going to give you some other phrases or descriptions of care. And I'm going to say to you, curative care. Tell me about curative care.
So palliative care can be provided in conjunction or alongside curative care. So you can get treatments for your underlying illness. You can be on medications for dementia and still get palliative care. So we work together.
Okay. Now let's talk about rehab or restorative care.
That is very similar as well. We work with someone to get back the quality of life or to find a new way to achieve a type of life that is meaningful to them, right? It may not be the exact same way they lived their life for the past 50 years. It may be actually helping them cope and adapt to their new situation and still helping them find a way to live well with their current health.
Yeah.
So that goes well together.
Yeah. So there's rehab where you fix the person's skills, or there's compensatory care where you modify environment or task or props so that people can still succeed. But, you do some changing of things.
Yes.
Now, how would you feel about then maintenance care?
Yeah, I would say palliative care is part of maintenance care as well, because I think that it's important to reassess once in a while what is working for you, where are areas in your life where you're having a little difficulty, where you feel maybe your caregivers could use extra support, or to check in and be like, you know what, I am achieving my goals and this is working for me, and celebrating that. So we're actually part of all of that.
Okay. Now, we got one plus to still go. Preventative.
Yes. So it's interesting because the first thought I think of when I think of preventative care as a physician, I think of vaccinations, I think of exercise, diet, all of those things, memory exercises, crossword puzzles, Sudoku, when I think of that in the setting of dementia care. But when I think of it in a palliative care lens, I see preventative care as, from the perspective of palliative care, to actually be a way to prevent crises.
Cool.
That's how I see it. I see it as having those conversations early on about what's important to you, including loved ones, including caregivers, so that if something happens and you're in the hospital in a stressful situation, they have some idea of what you would want and you're a little bit more prepared in terms of what the priorities are and how to handle that situation.
Yeah. Okay, now here's your last one.
Okay.
And it's sort of similar, but health promotion.
Yes. So
not just preventing, and so you sort of roll it together, and I get that, and I think it's important. Prevention, people want to prevent things, and sometimes and so I love that you're talking about preventing a crisis, preventing distress by really having thoughts and ideas and a plan and a plan B and a plan C a little bit, so that you're not in crisis, because what we're trying to actually prevent, I think, is distress and dysfunction.
Yes.
And that makes perfectly good sense to me. Health promotion is that side of to be comfortable for me, I like to be fit where I can. Now I'm not going to go overboard. I'm telling you, I am not signing up for a CrossFit class because that's just not me. It hasn't ever been me. I'll do yoga. I'll do some running. I'll do some,
Absolutely.
I'll do a variety of things. And I do things that are more fun, but I'm learning to respect what I want and don't want to do. And I used to love to play volleyball, but that quick switching directions anymore on my knees, it's like, I'm not sure that's a great idea for me anymore.
Yeah. Actually, I think it's interesting. I haven't thought about palliative care as a health promotion, but now that I hear kind of what you mean by that, I do see it as helping a person live well with whatever health situation that they have. And so it's interesting because I then think back on some patients that I've taken care of where they had a life-altering diagnosis, whether it was cancer or dementia. And then all of a sudden they were like, you know what, I know that getting out and going for a walk is going to help me like feel better. Yeah. It's going to help me cope with this illness. It's going to help me cope with when I think about dementia, like when in those early stages, when someone gets that new diagnosis, they're actually frightened.
Oh,
because you don't know how it's going to go, how quickly it's going to evolve. And so in those situations, things like yoga, exercise, meditation is a way to once again adapt and cope and help you live within the kind of your current health situation.
And I'm curious how many times people think what we're talking about is curative when it's not curative, and the meds aren't curative.
No.
I mean, what they are, the goal of them is promotion, health promotion.
Yes.
Like I can be the best I can be within the range of what's my new normal. And I think that if we could get our words to be a little bit more effective, you could still prevent me from getting perhaps the flu. And so I get a flu vaccine because I don't want to get the flu. I got a shingle vaccine because I don't want to get shingles. I've had my previous childhood. It was well before you could have those shots when I had my chickenpox. I had no interest because I've worked with people with shingles. It's like, no.
Yeah, it's not something.
So, I think what you're putting out there is, now here's my curiosity for you. How many people like you, physicians like you, practices like you are starting to be available to people who and their families who are living with dementia? And how would people find your practices? And how many people who are in physicians in palliative care are operating the way you're operating? Because I'm an OT, and I can tell you very few OTs are operating the way I'm operating. It's still considered fringe and unusual and pretty weird, but I think it's really important.
I would say that the majority of palliative care is still provided in the traditional way. It's provided in the hospital or in the office clinic setting.
Pain management.
Yes. And pain management is something we're really great at, that we can really help people with. But I think there's a whole other side. And the challenge is that the way our healthcare system is set up, the people that get the most access to palliative care are usually the people living with cancer. Because of the way that the healthcare system is set up, the way clinics are funded, most clinics, for example, will only be able to see cancer patients, right? And so that leaves a huge swath of people living with memory problems, living with dementia, heart failure, COPD, ALS, that could potentially benefit from palliative care. They just can't access it. And that's actually the frustration that my colleagues and I had, where we would see folks living with memory problems or dementia in the hospital. We would start having conversations about what mattered to them. And then when it was time for them to be discharged, we couldn't actually follow them in clinic, right? We couldn't continue these conversations. We couldn't continue to support their loved ones and the caregivers. And that was one of the things that really bothered me. And that was actually one of the reasons why my colleagues and I did get together and we started a Pine EMD, which is a virtual kind of concierge coaching practice to help not only the person living with the illness, but also their caregivers and their support
Everyone
system.
around them, because if everybody doesn't come together, we don't move forward together well. We don't modify environments. We don't figure out how to fill a day with some value.
Yeah.
Our dementia becomes everybody hates the dementia. And so you start to look like you hate me, and it's you don't like my dementia, neither do I. And I have other health conditions, kind of thing. So
it is definitely a new model. It's definitely like a new model.
An exciting new model.
It is.
An exciting new model.
It is. And it's interesting because a lot of the clients that we've worked with, some of them actually don't have primary care doctors because they moved, they're in the middle of a move, or
they were neurologist, and I only need to see you every 6 months to just check and see if everything's okay. And it's like,
or they haven't been able to get an appointment, or it's out 4 to 5 months. And so or 6, right? And so what's really interesting is that they can access us directly, and particularly in an illness like dementia or that causes memory problems, having conversations early in that window where that individual can participate is huge.
It's huge.
And sometimes you don't have 6 months to wait to get into your primary care doctor's office or to your geriatrician's office.
Well, by then bad habits have developed. I mean, lots of bad habits have already developed. I'm not going out much. I don't want to talk about it. We're having lots of arguments. I've done stuff with funding that I didn't mean to do, but we're really, old habits are erupting again. And they're risky habits of mine, but they're coming back because I have frontal temporal, if I have younger onset, and I have a behavioral variant. So, I mean, it's just, it's truly, to me, it's like, wow, very exciting.
Yeah.
So now, you mentioned at the beginning that you guys have actually put together and gotten some special funding. So tell us a little bit about that.
So we are very excited. And so we're trying to get the word out. So we got generous funding to be able to offer. Now we have 2 free coaching spots left. It includes an initial visit and 2 follow-ups. Cool. And this is for folks who are either living with illness or their caregivers, their loved ones who need extra support. Cool. And so we are able to offer this for free. So for anyone that's interested, you can go on our website. It's www.epionemd.com. And you can sign up for the free coaching service through that. It is virtual, so we can potentially reach people wherever they live
across
in the United States. Across the U.S., Alaska and Hawaii included.
Alaska, Hawaii included. Just have to work out hours.
We'll just have to work out the time zones. But yes, I did want to put that out there.
So there's 2 slots available for that. And there's also information on the website. We'll make sure that information is up there for everybody to take a look at and visit the site and double check. So are there any limitations on background or funding or anything along that lines?
No. So the only thing to know is that because it's a coaching service, it truly is coaching in the sense that just to say,
you're not going to be doing prescriptions.
We won't do prescriptions. We're not going to be working up a particular rash or something that you may have. And we'll refer you kind of to your primary care doctor for that.
This is game plan time, and looking at who's playing what positions, and have we got a team in place, and what's the goal, and which direction are we going here?
Right. This is, I think, what I would think about. A lot of people do estate planning or retirement planning. This is very similar to that in that it's anticipating, but it's for your health. So it's kind of healthcare planning.
Yeah. Cool.
And it's also providing support to people who are already living with this illness.
Yeah. And there was a recent article that came out that in at least a study of I think it was 600,000 people in UK, that when they received an early diagnosis, 1/3 of them considered or were considering or did commit suicide.
Wow.
So that speaks to, out of all those folks, we had a certain percent who ended up getting dementia. And of all those folks, 1/3 were at very high risk for suicide shortly after getting the diagnosis. So to me, boy, talk about a need for palliative or comfort-based care.
Yeah.
They're not in just discomfort, they're in acute pain.
Yes.
And we're not responding in a responsible way.
Yes.
And I think this model of recognizing this is not your garden variety, you've got osteoarthritis, figure it out. I mean, it's not like, boy, you've got a bad knee, you should be thoughtful about stuff, or, here's treatments and stuff. This is like, your life is different now. Here's your new normal. So let's talk about how you're going to live it and what's important to you.
And actually, I think what that amount of distress points out to me is that this is memory changes. This is an illness that not only affects you physically, but it affects your social life. It affects your psychological well-being, your spiritual well-being. And I think it's really important to provide kind of a holistic approach to caring for someone who is in a lot of distress about a new diagnosis of a memory problem.
And support people who are in huge amounts, like, this is going to change my life too, because, it's like, yikes.
Yeah.
And it's not just because it's a poorly reimbursed kind of condition for care. It means fiscally, legally, there's huge things. I mean, either you're competent or you're not, but actually that's inaccurate. I mean, that's not true. I mean, there are so many possibilities of when in the day I'm really good for decision making, or what kinds of or how you present choices to me so that I can still reliably choose what I want. And then when I choose and you don't like my choice, you indicate that I'm not skilled enough to make a decision. But it's actually pretty consistent with who I've always been. I'm just saying it slightly in a more physical way than I would have before, but I'm a risk taker. I mean, I don't want to be safe in a chair. I want to get up and move. And it's like, yes, I understand there will be risks of falls. I get it that I may break it. I mean, because I crushed an ankle climbing when I was 40. So I'm not thinking I'm not familiar with taking risks. So you get to be the boss of everything.
Right. And I think that once again just goes back to the early conversation about what matters to you. Because if for someone where mobility and movement, even when living with memory problems, matters to them, there are ways that we can get you mobile, get you moving. I mean, I know Tifa has a lot of ideas about that, but, and if it's clear that, it's possible you may fall, but that fall is still worth it.
Chair.
Right. Like, I think having that conversation is important, because then you get to be mobile the way that you can be safely, even within the healthcare system. If we were actually able to talk about, hey, mobility is really important to me, and I'm okay with like a little fall out of a chair if it's going to get me mobile the majority of the time.
Yeah. And, the difference between fall and fall-related injury. And, if you immobilize me, trust me, we'll have more fall-related injuries when I fall, versus if we keep me up and mobile, there's a high probability that when I fall, I won't get hurt as bad, because I have more response capabilities with gravity. So it gets tricky, and that's why we want to have a team, and we want to talk about this and work on it and experience some things. So,
I do want to say on that note, because palliative care is actually a very holistic approach, we actually do care for people within kind of an interdisciplinary team. So you'll have physicians, nurses, social workers, chaplains, OT, PT, really working together and making full use of what they have to offer an individual and their family.
Yeah. So this conversation, palliative care is not at all hospice care. Palliative care, we truly believe, could be the support structure under which all care could be delivered based on an individual being in the middle, so that we're not neglectful and we're not abusive, but we truly are providing best practice for this human being that's in front of us and their support system.
Right. And palliative care is really an umbrella term,
Mm-hmm.
and it includes a lot of different components. It includes everything from advanced care planning that someone may do when they're, I don't know, 50, 60 years old, as they're preparing for 40, younger than
Long-term care insurance,
right.
if you think it might be important.
Exactly. It's part of that conversation. When you think about retirement planning, when you think about estate planning, when you think about getting your finances in order for the future, advanced care planning and healthcare planning is part of that conversation, right? It also includes things like providing support, whether it's emotional, spiritual, to caregivers, to you, and also to your caregivers. And it includes things like thinking about legacy work, like what kind of memories do you want to leave behind for your family, for your loved ones, and really being intentional about it. And it does include thinking about end-of-life care. And this umbrella is a big tent. It's a big umbrella. Yeah. And it does include end-of-life hospice care, but that's one small part of what palliative care has to provide.
Yeah.
And I also use that metaphor of umbrella because palliative care is the umbrella. It's not the rain. We are
exactly.
we're the firefighters coming in to help you. We're not the fire.
No. You got a fire. Let's see what we can do to get it under control here.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and I think a couple pieces I would add, because I know they matter. Where do I want my care delivered if I have the options? Where would I rather, and is that probable, possible, improbable? I mean, and what if so, then what else could be an option? So really getting us to look at housing and support personnel and what's it going to take for me? I mean, how much skill does it take to be around me when my needs are high? And, is it physical? Is it emotional? As we say, this is a complicated. Dementia is an umbrella term too. Neurodegeneration is an umbrella term. So if we put those together, it makes sense that this is a model. So the tricky part for those of us in the front line is we're creating models for people to decide to move forward. So looking at people as, precious gems and in a gem state rather than on some global deterioration scale where we're going to talk about what have you lost, now what have you lost, and what are you doing wrong these days? I mean, forget it. It's like we're not how that happens, but that's that's not you.
Yeah. And I think it's really bringing medical care back to the person. It's really personalizing your medical care. And it's hard to personalize care if we don't even know what you want.
Yeah. You think? No, we'll just go through the motions. We'll just go through the checklist. Just like, let's not do that. Okay. Well, once again, thank you so much for an amazing session and remarkable insights. And most of all, thank you for the work you're doing. Because, this is the kind of practice, those of us who are out here in the world, that's the practice we need. That's the practice that's going to make a difference for people and their families. That's the practice that should be the practice.
It should be the
so
practice.
Hard.
Yeah, it's true. This should be the type of care everyone gets.
I mean, and so the difference, and I'm not going to be rude, but I want to say, you're not trying to be the captain of the ship and steer the ship everywhere. You're being the coach of the team and trying to help the team perform the best they can, see where we have missing people for positions, looking at what's the goal. And that's a very different role. And I think that idea of switching roles around a little bit in dementia, and maybe in more conditions, as you said, all health conditions where you're going to be living with them for the rest of your life, it would make sense to coach rather than try to be the captain of somebody's fate.
Right. And we really do collaborate. Like, we do not work in a silo. We do not want to work in a silo. And we will collaborate with you. We'll collaborate with your caregivers. We'll collaborate with your nurses and the rest of your medical team too. Because I think if we are all working towards how can we best serve you, then we will help you reach kind of your goals and what is important to you.
Yeah.
and help you live your
And we
day-to-day
can
life
look
a
at where,
little bit better.
if things are not working right, we can go, wow, okay, so that's what you want, but this is what's happening. Let's figure that out. I mean, do you not really want it? Somebody wants it, but it's not you. Let's talk about it, because it's not going to change if we don't start talking and working on something.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly it.
All right. Well, okay, this was another courageous conversation. I'm sure we'll have you back. I know that there are lots of things that are going to come up after this conversation. And, we can talk about potentially having a live session where people could ask you questions.
Okay. Yeah.
But we'll build toward that, because I
can warm up towards that.
Good use of you as an amazing resource in the world of providing support and care that is palliative.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. And I'm a big fan of what you do and your show, and just how you've connected with people that I think, and actually empowered them in a way that our healthcare system has actually failed in that sense. So I really appreciate that.
Welcome. Namaste.
Hi, I'm Teepa Snow, and you just found our YouTube channel and watched one of our videos. I'm the owner and founder of Positive Approach to Care. Thanks for watching, and if you liked, if you have a comment about, or you would, please share it with people you know. Oh, and if you haven't yet done it, consider subscribing. We'll let you know when the next new video comes out, and you might want to visit our website, www.teepasnow.com, where you'll find other resources as well. See you there.